The Canadian dollar this morning hitting a new four-year low against the US currency. Why is the loonie under pressure? We are joined by David Doyle, Head of Economics at Macquarie Group. David, thanks very much indeed for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
The basic reason, lower yields in Canada and a strong US dollar?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think you have this theme of U.S. exceptionalism persisting in the markets, and I think people projecting that forward after what appears to be a potential Republican sweep down south. And then on the other hand, people are also looking at some of the relative economic headwinds that we're confronting here in Canada. I think most specifically the mortgage rate reset issue that is set to become more intense in 2025. And then also the recent slowing in immigration that was announced by the federal government, which should also weigh on our growth outlook. So those things together, I think putting downward pressure on the loonie.
Should we be concerned? Because, of course, it means we're importing inflation since we bring in so much into this country.
Yeah, look, I don't think that right now what matters more so than the level of the loonie is the rate of change when it comes to an inflation. And so we've had the Bank of Canada and sort of other folks in Canada become concerned when you've seen these sharp declines in the Canadian dollar. And those most recently occurred during the COVID period. And then preceding that, when there was the oil price sharp fall in late 2015, early 2016. This time around, it seems a little bit different. We're not seeing necessarily yet a super sharp decline. It's been more gradual, it's been more contained, and I don't think it's yet at the point where it's likely to cause an inflation issue. But potentially, if this move persists, that could become the case at some point in 2025.
Well, how does the Bank of Canada feel about that? I guess it is stimulative too, though, if we have a low currency helps our exporters.
Yeah, I mean, look, that there should be some support through that channel. I don't think that it's now at the rate of change is at a level that it's likely to cause any sort of alarm at the Bank of Canada. I think we're a fair bit of ways from that. But again, if the move persists, that's into early 2025, and you have a sharply weakening dollar that creates instability that's likely to weigh on business investment, and then simultaneously could lead to an increase in inflation. That might make the BOC more concerned. But again, I don't think we're at that sort of rate of change or at that level just yet.
Can we move on to the U.S. economy? The inflation picture south of the border, obviously, Jay Powell can claim a lot of success for the Fed's inflation fighting campaign. But you note that core inflation in America has been stable for about 3 months, not declining.
Yeah, I mean, the monthly pace has picked up a little bit from low levels in August, September, October. So you have seen a little bit of a pickup in the trend. But again, I don't think that there's anything in the data concerning on the inflation front. In fact, I think the details that were out today in the Consumer Price Index release in the U.S. were quite favorable. And I think they are supportive of the Fed moving another 25 basis points in December.
The thing about inflation, I suppose, is professionals like you note that it's going down, but a lot of the public consumers, it hurts, and people have not been used to it. They haven't seen it, or they didn't see inflation like this for decades. So what's the impact on consumer behavior broadly when they do see a high level of price increases?
Well, I think what you have is sort of lingering frustration with inflation, and I think the way that most consumers think about inflation is on a cumulative basis. So they might look at it and say something like, over the past 3 years, prices are up 20%, and that's different from how we economists look at it, how people at Bank of Canada, for example, will look at it, where they're looking at the year-over-year percentage change. And so that has come way in terms of the year-over-year percentage change. But of course, the cumulative price increase over the past 2 or 3 years hasn't come in, right? That's only gotten worse. So I think that's what's caused a lot of people's frustration on the inflation front. But look, Andrew, the analysis we've done suggests that people's wages have risen, even more than inflation, right? So that suggests that actually people in aggregate, maybe not every single person, but people in aggregate are actually somewhat better off compared to where they were, say 3 years ago.
What is your view on President-elect Trump's policies? Is it a given that they'll be inflationary? I mean, big deficits, tariffs, etc.
So, look, I don't think anything in this world is a given, but certainly directionally, the policies being proposed by Trump should be inflationary. The potential for wider fiscal deficits, the potential for tariffs, even the potential for him to conduct some deportation or even stem the flow of immigration could be viewed as inflationary. So certainly feels like, we're in for firmer inflation, depending upon how policies are implemented, than potentially would have been the case had the election gone the other way.
Yep. You're being non-committal there. Well, I mean, you've got to be cautious, and I know that's you economists on the one hand, on the other. But is it plausible that we could see a real rebound in U.S. inflation?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's plausible for sure, and to be clear, I don't want to be I don't want to be too much of a fence sitter here. Directionally, yes, Trump's policies are if they're implemented as he said they would be inflationary. I think the big risk when it comes to the policy outlook are the tariffs, right? And the tariffs could be commensurate with a significant inflation shock, and they could affect specifically the goods component of inflation, and potentially that causes ripple effects into the services sector. But I honestly, I think it's too soon to make a call in terms of what exactly that will be. Trump's made significant threats on the tariff front, but it's unclear, how he'll proceed with the actual implementation. I think a lot depends on to what extent he negotiates trade deals and trade outcomes with with U.S. trade partners on a bilateral basis, and to what extent he actually proceeds with implementing tariffs as he did primarily against China in his first term.
David, thank you very much. It's great to hear from you. It feels like it's been ages since we talked. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
David Doyle, Head of Economics at Macquarie.